I think one of the big differences that I'm already observing is the best stuff are not made in apps right now. The best stuff is done through browsers. And when I was talking with my friend Anthony DePascal, he's talking about how that the ability to build worlds on just regular websites makes it so you don't have so much of that walled garden experience, where if you have the Oculus, you can only do Oculus things with Oculus people. And instead, you can use any headset you want because everybody navigates to the same space.
So does that mean that someone could come into this bar through the Mozilla hub and use a different headset?
Yeah, they could use a different headset, or for the book club right now, probably about half of the people just come in on their computers or even their phones. The downside of somebody using their phone is you've got to really scale back the graphics. And as you can see in this room, we have a lot of good book covers, things that are kind of high resolution. So for those people, it becomes kind of obnoxious, but you could be on your computer in here just as easily.
Though you wouldn't get the immersive VR effect.
Yeah, in fact, when people are on their computers, I think they wonder why everybody in VR thinks it's so amazing and we love it so much. But it's because you don't get the sense of looking around. I mean, it genuinely feels like you and I are sitting here. I want to turn my head and look at you, and I feel weird if I'm looking this way and not at you, even though we're not in the same room. So the actual physically moving your head and moving around, I think, is one of the reasons it feels so much more real.
Yeah, and also the the embedding. I'm looking around, looking at these very cool book covers you have on the wall, and the fine grained wood floor, and the wood ceiling, and the stone wall, and it's like real life. It attracts you're having a relatively high bandwidth experience, which is interesting. Again, I don't know what it all means, what it's good for, but it's certainly different. Even on Zoom, you tend not to really notice the background much. And of course, a lot of people use fake backgrounds. I generally don't, but once in a while I do. Here we have a fake background, but one with a lot of nuance to it. It's kind of cool.
Well, and in this space, I actually had spent quite a bit of time, I'm kind of an amateur lover of architecture. I could never actually build a real building that anyone would ever want to walk into. But in this space, I was able to take some principles. And I remember having heard not that long ago that the reason New York is so famous for doing comedy is because all of the comedy clubs were built before they were building codes. And so they could have these low ceilings, and that low ceiling makes people have the impression of feeling really close in. And one of the things I noticed about VR was people would build these giant spaces because the materials don't cost anything. But really, if you're trying to create an experience with human beings, creating a space that pushes them together and makes them feel like they're a part of something really kind of makes the whole experience better.
Yeah, that's, I think, exactly right. I've noticed that in business. When you have a startup company and you move to your new space, still recall my very first startup, we had 100 people crammed into 4,100 square feet. That's pretty crammed, let me tell you. And then we moved to 10,000 square feet, and it felt like something was wrong with our culture for a while because suddenly the density had fallen by a factor of 2.5. Then we decided to pack the various units together into subsets of the space to recover something close to our previous density, and then the culture started feeling right again. So I think there's really something about density as something that we react to in a pretty solidly human way.
Yeah, as you're saying that, I'm thinking about the giant movement towards open offices. And it was kind of sold to everyone as, oh, we'll be more communal. We'll be able to, people will see each other more. And the funny thing, I don't know about everybody, but I know for me, the only work that I do that's valuable requires me to focus. It requires me to not have distraction, not hear other people's phones. But I agree. I don't mind being around a lot of other people, but I need to, at some level, be able to close the door and not have interruptions if I'm going to do work that's more valuable than the work I would do by watching TV or something.
Yeah, it's interesting. I used to feel that way, and perhaps for me, it's still true. But I have seen a whole bunch of quite successful tech startups that do have, 7 people sitting right next to each other on a long bench. And they seem to have developed the ability to go into the tube and do their work, despite people 2 feet to the left and to the right of them. And it does, of course, facilitate real-time conversations, right? Of course, you need some meta signaling. When am I available to be talked to? But it certainly allows that serendipitous conversation to happen at a higher rate. So it may be that you're just an old fart, even though you're a relatively young old fart, right? That you haven't figured out how to operate in that space. Because I've been to these companies and I kind of shudder a little bit trying to envision myself in that space. But some of these companies have produced some remarkable products. Some of the companies I've been involved with as an advisor, an investor, a board member, et cetera. And I think it's just different, a different set of skills and affordances. Affordance means things you can do. The idea that you can be 2 feet from somebody and hit them on with your elbow and say, come over on the screen here and look at my code and let's walk through the code together. Is something that's much more likely to happen than if we're each in our 10 by 10s and, you got to get up, walk down the hall, blah, blah, blah. So it's different. And I'm not sure I'd be able to deal with it, but I can say that it does work.
Well, I have several friends that have all engineered their own brown noise machine headphones, right? Where it's some amount of static that allows them to have to be able to block things out. And one of my friends was talking about really wanting to have a light signal on there, like, green means go ahead and bump me, yellow means, send me a message and I'll pop out, and red means don't interrupt, because I, for one, I am capable of reading at a very, very high velocity. But if somebody interrupts me, it's no different from a person like waking me up out of a dead sleep. My instantaneous reaction is anger. And I'm not an angry person. I'm like an amiable, happy person. But if I'm reading and get interrupted, it will take me minutes to be able to come back down, even if it was a totally reasonable request for somebody to interrupt me.
Yeah, it's funny. Reading doesn't bother me too much. I think I can sync back up in 30 seconds or a minute. But programming, oh my God, right? If I'm deep into a hard part of a program, it can take me 20 minutes to get to resync. And there's some, cognitive science research that indicates something like a 20 per minute reset time when you're doing your best and hardest thinking, because you got to get completely back into that state where it's all in your head. At least my style of programming is I build a quite elaborate mental model of what I'm doing, which allows me to operate at pretty high velocity. But if I get interrupted at all by anything, the model collapses and it takes a while to rebuild it.
Yeah, that's the same thing for me, what you're describing. For me, when I read, if I am really into it, I don't even see the words anymore. It's just me flipping pages. It's not only like second after second, but I mean, I don't really sit there and have to think about the words, and to get popped out of it it takes a long time to get up to that speed again. But I'm not a programmer, so I don't have the same experience in programming.
Thanks for checking out this podcast short. If you like this interview, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button and hit that bell so you always get notified about this podcast. And if you're really interested in conversations like this, you may want to consider joining the Articulate Ventures Network. To find out more, go to network.articulate.ventures.